What's up, guys? It's your boy Beats by Ash coming at you with the very first episode of the Table One podcast, and I am here with my brother, aka the Baron Von Pizza himself, back out of the shackles of his family life, here to bring us an amazing first episode. And he's got some information about some tournaments and what's been going on in the One Piece game. If you don't mind starting us off.
Yeah, so you kind of introduced me into One Piece. It's like a real easy game to play, so I just kind of got curious. I got more of a business background. I was looking at how the tournaments are set up and just the format. They've got a couple options as far as online, in person, and kind of a store championship series. And it looks like there's multiple ways to qualify for the Nationals. And I don't know, it was just really streamlined how they had it overall, compared to other games that are out there. And you kind of, I guess it's a new game, so that helps it out quite a bit. But what's been your, I guess that's from the overall standpoint. What's been your experience as far as getting out there in the tournament scene?
When we compare it to other tournaments, first off, I want to start off by saying this is my first Bandai game. I've had experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic in the past, but as far as Bandai, I'm very new to that kind of scene. And the first thing that you should know about their tournaments is that you're required to download the Bandai TCG app, which you must log into the app, and it's honestly pretty confusing to understand how to enter a tournament. I had to have someone teach me how to do it, and that's pretty much the story all around. I believe it's got a 1-star app review on the App Store. So that's kind of funny because you're required to use it to download to get into the tournament. And another thing is, let's say your tournament start time is at 7 p.m. Well, you could be at the tournament and you could be signed up with the store owner and already paid and stuff. But if you don't enter through the app, like check in beforehand, before a certain time, it actually kicks you out of the tournament. So that's one thing that is a little bit irritating. But one of the advantages of this system is that it's best of one, which, people have, different thoughts about that. But it is 30 minutes or 25 or 30 minutes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like designed to be faster than Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, because I know you when you got started out in Yu-Gi-Oh! You'd want me to participate, and I'm like, man, I don't have 5 hours free on a Tuesday night or whatever. But the one game, the couple games we played, it was like, after you at least get through the app or whatever, like, there's no nonsense past that.
Yep. And the other thing about it is there's not really any ruling discrepancies so far, which was one of the other things that might cause your other tournament experiences to go a little longer. Whereas in this game, our recent tournament I played in that was 5 rounds, we actually started at 5 o'clock and we got done by 8. And for 5 rounds, that's honestly amazing because in most of their card games, it's like 40, 45 minutes, and that 40, 45 minutes turns into an hour very quickly. And so it's also kind of an advantage that the app, because you have to sign in at a specific time, most tournament organizers are going to have that cutoff date and start immediately at that time, whereas in the past, other games you may have experienced might have started like a little later, So overall, it's pretty smooth. And they go by the time rules of 0, 1, 2, 3 turns, which is something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Diverged from many years ago, and a lot of people strongly prefer the 0, 1, 2, 3. I so far have not ran into any situations where when I went into time, the match was ended in a non-decisive way. So, that's very nice because it definitely feels very dissatisfying when you play in a tournament in some kind of game and someone wins by a technicality, whether you're on the winning side or losing side, you always want to feel like you got to that triumphant moment.
Yeah, or just some closure or whatever. Yeah, I think going back to the app thing, I don't know. I mean, all the game companies, I guess, entertainment companies, whatever, are pushing for that electronic experience. Um, Give them more control over content and everything. It's harder to ban a card when it's in person. You know, you can easily restrict a card on an app. You know, so there's like a control element there, but I think it's also kind of easier to keep everybody in line. So apps are going to be the thing, even if you're not playing on them or whatnot. Um, Kind of give or take. I don't know. I feel like you got to enforce some discipline at some point. And as far as like the timing during play, yeah, there's like, I don't know. It seems like if you give somebody an opportunity to game the system, like there's gonna be people that'll try and like run out time, frustrate you. I don't know, mess around. Um, Whereas most people that are like casual and just kind of, supporting the game, but they're not necessarily hitting every regional or nationals, you know, they're not they're not going to stick around if you keep stuff up like that, you know. So I think it's important to cultivate them just as much as it is, your hardcore. I'm going to go out and spend 10K on the latest deck and alternate print foil limited edition super secret rare, right? Um, you need both of them if it's gonna have the longevity. And yeah, I guess we'll see with One Piece. I think definitely it's set up in a thoughtful way that um, it's going to be around for at least, I think we discussed this before, like 2 or 3 years or whatnot. But I guess other part of that is the community. So what's been your experience with the community thus far?
I mean, honestly, it's probably been the least toxic experience I've had in any card game. So far, I haven't met anyone that um, to give you an example, in previous games I've played, sometimes at a local game store, there would be a person there that may or may not go consistently, but when they were there, I could identify them and be like, dang, I really hope I don't go against this person just because they consistently lowered the fun level of our matches every time I went against them. And with One Piece,
Yeah, there's
that's yet to
always that
happen.
like one. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So there's like, so we play. I was there with you and you played Yu-Gi-Oh in store and at one particular regional, and then we played some Hero Clicks together, and it was like there's always gonna. It seems like there's always gonna be like the dude or the dudes. There might be a couple of them that ghost in and out, and they're just shysters straight to the core, and nobody likes them, but they're there. Or there's people making bad deals, right? Especially Yu-Gi-Oh. There's always somebody ripping kids off with, all these kind of skeezy deals. Um, yeah, it's an interesting point. It's like when, if you were going to put a percentage to it, it's like when you got like 100 people show up, if 5 of them are like that, like 5%, is it really, I don't think it really spoils the event. I think you could still call that a pretty good community, even if it's, those people are there. Once you start getting to like 25%, now you're looking at like, I'd consider that Magic the Gathering. I don't even know how to coin it. It's like you getting Mad Dog stares from across the room. Some dude just grabs your binder and just starts tossing through it, acting like he already halfway owns it by the time he's touched it. You're like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? Taking cards out, shuffling around. Oh, man. Oh. It's like, dude, get your greasy hot dog fingers off my stuff. All right. Approach me like a normal person. But, they're just like born in a cave or something. I don't know. So, yeah. It's like a low percentage is always going to be there. High percentage might be time for greener pastures at that point. But yeah, I mean, One Piece is pretty new, so it's kind of, as far as the complexity and like all the rules, the spaghetti string of intertwined rules coming together and creating these like high drama situations. Yeah, it's a new game. It's gonna have the advantage in that aspect.
Yeah. Because, I mean, right now we're kind of just playing with the core components of the game, which is a big advantage of itself because currently there's not a lot of ways that you can bend the rules to your advantage, even if you're trying to do so. And so that's a big part of why people have been like so nice so far because it's like, some games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Are honestly like at a point where they're mostly based around, like, in a competitive sense, trying to bend the rules or rule sharking, or abusing the time rules, There's just not those opportunities in One Piece, and I think that just adds a lot to the community right now.
Yeah. Well, someone told me a long time ago, you know, sorry, let me give the background. If you, it's also kind of prize support, right? The bigger the prize, like especially some of the Magic ones back in the day, it's gonna lend itself to some toxic people coming out. You put a $1 million cash prize on some tournament series, dude, you're gonna get every sleazeball on earth going in there, even if they have no idea what they're doing. They're just going for the cash or whatever, right? Or people, doing stuff like, especially electronic games, where they're like trying to game the system where they're reducing their lag time by relocating closer to the servers and the headquarters or whatever contractor. Just crazy stuff that people go over, like high prize, high money situations. So, yeah, with One Piece, I don't know what the thing is, but like I was going to say, someone told me a long time ago that if you held a rock throwing contest, and that was it, only kids would show up, right? But if you put $1,000 grand prize attached to that rock throwing contest, you'd see the most rock throwing motherfuckers you've ever seen. So, yeah, like the cash goes up, the competitive spirit, and whatever else follows.
Yeah, I mean, that also just brings up a very interesting discussion because in One Piece, honestly, I would say that currently the prize support so far has been better than Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic combined. So, at this point, at the time of this recording, we're about like 6 weeks into the official English release. And there were actually some tournaments that were happening weeks before the release. And essentially, at our current point, we have the set 1 as well as the 4 starter decks. And before the set 1 was officially released, they had these sealed tournaments where you just paid for a structure deck and then you battled other people with it. And the difference between those decks and the ones that were available after the game was officially released is that all of your cards have a gold imprinting on the picture somewhere that says super pre-release, and those actually sell for $100 to $150 per starter deck when their value was only like $12 to buy in. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
the game economy, the trade economy isn't like busted, like especially like Magic, say we could probably do an entire episode on Wizards of the Coast. We won't, kind of keep this limited for the time being, but the print, the amount of printing and all that stuff goes in there. And I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh, what would you say like the average price for a rare Yu-Gi-Oh card? I don't know how would you metric that out? It'd
um,
be like the average price for a One Piece rare as opposed to a Yu-Gi-Oh rare, let's say.
so Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of a weird game since it's pretty much the only game where you can use cards that are available throughout the history of the entirety of the game.
Yeah, there's not like a
Still,
standard
yeah,
season or whatever.
still in the modern game. So what that does is there's these class of cards called staples. These are cards
Yeah,
that if you were building a deck, that you would always want to have these on hand, and you are most likely going to put these cards into a lot of your competitive decks. And then we have what are in the newest sets and are called archetypes, which just add new engines to your deck. They allow you to, do different strategies and stuff. And the way that the game has been going is like those archetypes that come in these sets, that might cost you about, $200 to complete or something, or $100, relatively cheap. You just
yeah,
have to have the staples. So for a new person, you might need like this staple card that's a three of in every deck, and it's like $100 each, and you need three of those in every deck. You don't have those, and then there's one that's 50, there's one that's 60. So it's really hard to like put that in perspective. But if we're talking about like in the newest core boosters, I would say a
yeah,
lot of the three ofs you need are between like 30 upwards to like $80. Each deck might have one $80 three of, and then they have like multiple $20 to $30 three ofs. Whereas
yeah.
like in One Piece, since there's only four colors right now, and I mean we're getting like one or two more colors in the future, but for the most part, you can kind of mix and match cards in the same way that Magic is, where you can kind of put any two cards together in the same deck, even though it may not make sense. And that really, gives you the value of what cards are going for in One Piece, because you have like the upper echelon of the most expensive deck right now requires like four copies of a $30 card, and then four copies of a $25 card, and then pretty much all the other cards are like $0, as I mean they're commons in the pack, which other people will probably give
Okay,
you for free, and a
so that's
starter
a
deck.
sorry to cut you out. Like that's probably a better test than if I were to go buy 10 booster packs of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh set and, and whatever's out there for One Piece, because it's all latest. It's only like you said, 6 weeks into release. What's like my average pull? Because I'm guessing the average amount of money you could make off the cards you pull out of those 10 packs in Yu-Gi-Oh is probably not going to hit what you spent, right? As opposed to One Piece, since there's just less cards by virtue of being so new, like you're honestly like looking at a decent chance to at least break even on what you spend at the cards. That's my guess. Like that's my intuition judging it from the situations. But yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the archetypes because it's like anything you pull in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like with the archetypes, it's like I could pull a couple cards from a particular archetype, but I don't have enough to play that deck. I'm like, oh, I'm looking for this particular archetype, but I got a couple of the good cards from this other archetype. Now I got to go start hunting for those, and it's like eh, so frustrating. Unless you're buying structure decks, it's almost like you have to buy structure decks or hit up TCG Player or whatever. But
Yeah, and structure decks aren't always in the meta. Sometimes they come out with a structure
yeah,
deck and it's just a whiff. And a lot of times you may just even pull a high value card. Let's say you pull a $40 card. Well, it's an archetype card. You're like, I don't have the other cards that I can build this deck. And I want to trade this to someone. And it's like, okay, yeah, this card is worth this amount of money, but I need to find someone who specifically wants to build this deck, or they're not going to trade for it because it can only be used in this strategy.
yeah, yeah. Well, and like with Magic, I remember for a while, along the lines of the structure decks, it's kind of funny, like those challenger decks, or I can't remember what they were called
Challenger
exactly.
decks, I believe.
Okay, yeah, and they were like more expensive than a regular sealed deck or whatever, and you could almost make money just by like buying those and then selling out the rare, or if it came with a mythic. I don't know if it did or not, but it was like almost like you buy this thing for 30, but the one particular card in it's worth like 20-25 bucks because everybody's
Yeah.
searching for one.
And I know a lot of those had a history of giving you reprints that, at the time
Yeah,
it depreciated the cost of the original printing and gave people access to a budget version. But then, like, maybe 6 months or a year later, just like you said, if you still had all those, you could generate a profit because then those reprints became hard to find and people needed more copies of the card anyway.
yeah, yeah. Especially with those older games, man. It sucks a lot of the fun out of it. We were talking about games that are accessible to kind of the casual newcomers, and how important it is to, I believe it, at least from a business point of view, it's very important to foster those people and keep them engaged.
Yep.
Um, but as far as like the competitive elements, it's almost worth more just to go to, if you're really going to get the value for your money and build a competitive deck, you got to go to TCG Player. You're not going to pull something randomly. Um, and it gets to a point where you're not even buying booster packs anymore. And that's just like, it sucks all the fun out of it,
Hmm.
because that's part of the thrill, right? Like we've talked about it before, but like going out and getting packs and sitting there opening them with your friends and checking out what you got, either out of a booster box or just, especially if you're, uh, a teenager, you probably saved up a bunch of money to go out and get stuff. And it's like that thrill of pulling something good out of a pack. Well, as far as Magic goes, what was a good example of this? What was the set that, like, was it like Midnight Meat Cleaver came in? It was like literally the only
Yeah, Midnight Hunt.
card. Or no, no, no. It was like Midnight Meat Hook.
Yeah, it's
It was
yeah,
one
you're
pretty
talking
recent.
about Meat Hook Massacre. It's in Midnight
Meat
Hunt.
Hook Master. That's it. That's it. That's it. Yeah. I like. I was looking at that set, and everybody's like, "This is the only card worth pulling," and everything else is trash. And it's like, well, then why would anybody invest anything in this set? Like, why would anybody invest any booster packs? Like, that's got to be the worst thing if you're a store owner in particular. Like,
Yeah.
knowing you're sitting on like thousands of dollars of merchandise, and there's it's looking at a palette of these cards going, what the hell am I going to
Yeah.
do with this? Everybody's going to buy this for that one card, and if it's in the box topper or whatever, is pretty demoralizing. Whereas One Piece, I think, is still new. It's just can you get alternate art and all the exciting stuff in there?
Yeah, see, well, that's the deal is that, like, they're putting the alternate arts in the core set, and, ultimately the game isn't that new that we can be saying they're going to fuck it up in the near future because in Japan, they do have set 2 and set 3, and it's being structured the same way that we know of. Whereas in Magic, a big problem of what you're just talking about comes from the fact that they just diluted the ability for anyone to make any money back on those packs because they created like 4 different type of booster packs, and the general booster pack that people will be drafting with, people will be buying boxes of, is, I mean, completely robbed of all of the value, so that it will all be put into a separate repackaged version that comes with all of the better art cards of, just different versions of those same core cards that has all the value in them. I believe they're called like collector boosters, stuff like that. There's like 4 different pack types now.
It was like $3,000 to get 4 packs and a chance at all
I think like a
the
box
rare
is like 600.
I don't know what it is exactly, but
A
it's
collector
like
boosters. It was like 600 or something compared to 120 on a normal box.
yeah, I think you call them like the Powerade or something like that. All
Well,
the
that
Mox
was a
Gens.
one-time deal. I'm talking about with
What?
every single core set, they have an additional version which you can buy separate boxes of, which all comes with all the same cards, but every one is a foil, and it gives you the alternate art versions of all those cards, and you can't even get those in the normal boxes. So essentially, that's where all of like the money cards are, and the normal box is worth nothing, and it's because of that.
Yeah, yeah. They're going Diablo Immortal style. Wizards is. They're like, forget forget all the small fish, man. We need some whales who just don't even care and buy everything that ever comes out. Yeah, that's crazy. I do know, uh, kind of comparing One Piece, Bandai, I guess, and Konami's way of doing things. Like Bandai is also kind of bet, in my opinion, is better positioned to keep One Piece going long term because they started out as a toy and entertainment uh, company. So like they started out in Gundam figures and continue that to this day. Um, so they're more related to like card games, board games, entertainment, things of that nature. Whereas Konami really is a software company. They made all the old Nintendo games, Contra. I think they even made the Metal Gears, all
Yeah,
that sort of thing. And when you look at their plans and what they're reporting out through their stockholders meetings and information, like that's where they make their money. They make their money in software, electronic stuff. That's why there's always been a big push from their end to do the Yu-Gi-Oh games on the DS, Xbox, online, dual terminals, like any which way you can cut it. They've always wanted it to, they've always pushed it towards the digital space because that's what they specialize in. It makes sense
exactly.
from their angle. Might not be, it may not work in the player's favor. I think often it doesn't, especially if you're more interested in face-to-face card gaming. But that's one area that Bandai is most likely going to have an advantage in going long term, among the other things that we've talked about as far as how the game's set up, how the cards play, and just kind of everything involved with casual play. But as far as availability, what's that been like from your experience?
So, essentially, most stores are pretty much sold out of booster boxes. I'm kind of lucky enough that a local game store that I play at, they saved back a certain amount of boxes to where those boxes will only be given out as tournament prize support. So there's actually like, quite a few people showing up because there is, reason to show up.
The goods.
More reward.
They got the goods, man.
Yeah,
Everything's gonna lock that way.
They got the goods, and other stores that don't have that, they offer store credit instead, which is like, okay, because you got some people who will save the store credit for when the next pack comes out, but we're also supposed to be experiencing a second wave of boxes to be distributed, as well as I've heard that like every fourth or fifth Target has like blister packs, those ones that come in that cardboard packaging that aren't necessarily sold by the box. You can't get that discount, but if you want some loose packs, you could get that there. I personally never experienced that, but I've been told that, as well as the 4 starter decks I've been told are available at Targets in the same aspect. But the local game store that I go to, they also have pretty much an insane amount of these starter decks that you can still buy at the MSRP of $12.99, whereas they're sold out in most places, and on the secondary market, they're about like $30 because most people can't get access to those. Most people can't get access to the packs, as well as I've heard of many stores who don't even have the promo packs, which are given out as prize support. So the supplies are very limited right now, but that is supposed to change very soon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and that's like kind of I think there's 2 parts to that. Probably popularity, definitely. From what you've told me, there's you go to a tournament, and there's at least 20 people hanging around.
Mm-hmm.
But also, industry's having trouble with the supply chain on printing and all that. I've seen, from what I've looked at, a lot of companies are making moves to move all their printing operations in-house, or at least buy out smaller printers. They can scale up to whatever they need operations-wise. Actually, Pokemon did that. They bought a little mom-and-pop print shop out in South Carolina that's exclusively going to do their cards and run all their quality control and stuff. So it's temporary, kind of like you alluded to.
One thing to consider on that front is that in One Piece, that there's like a reason of people to buy it that aren't playing the game, and I've met several people who are buying it. They just showed up at the card store, and they actually were buying out stores, buying out packs, and they really were never gonna play the game. Whereas in like Yu-Gi-Oh, for the most part, people are not buying packs unless they're playing the game. Like there's not as much nostalgia associated with that as there once was.
Speculators. Probably a lot of speculators. Like we were talking about the card economy, trading economy, I guess you could say. Your value on buying packs is going to be way higher on a new game.
I mean,
Probably
yeah.
Doesn't even matter what the new game is, unless you're looking at what's it that we saw back in the day, Shaolin Showdown. It was based off of some Cartoon Network throwaway episodic adventure. And someone decided they were going to get into the world of TCG with their Shaolin Showdown, and that guy at that shop still had a booster box 10 years after the cartoon had gone off air. It was man, that was a flash in the pan for sure. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think speculators would break the market eventually?
I mean, there are a lot of people who are kind of doing that. I've seen on Facebook groups that there's a lot of people who are literally just getting useless shit graded. Like, if you know anything about card games, it's not really worth it to grade cards unless you have something that's like over $500. And at the same time, it's better that you actually have an understanding of what that would come back as. So it's not really something most people will get into. But for some reason, I just keep seeing people sending in these like $10 and $20 cards in One Piece. And they're like, hey, someone buy my not PSA 9 Boa Hancock. And it's just like, dude, okay, number one, I don't know why you got that graded. Number two, the quality control is insane. So everybody has a PSA 9. And also, it's not even cost effective for you to get stuff graded unless you have a yearly membership. And you're really only doing that unless you're like a physical storefront. So it's just really
Yeah.
weird that people do that. At the same time, besides the speculators, another probably the main reason why I said people are buying the packs because and don't even play the game is because people watch the anime, and the anime's been going on for over 20 years, and it's still going on, which is something
Right.
that hasn't been happening, in Yu-Gi-Oh for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Yu-Gi-Oh ones were always weird because it was like they never followed the rules.
Yeah,
It was like if you knew anything about Yu-Gi-Oh, it was almost a comedy. They had these cards. Anything, especially what was it, the original series with the Toon deck. It was like, oh man, I feel sorry for the kid that saw, uh, wasn't Kaiba. What was the main villain of the
Pegasus, the creator of the game.
Pegasus? That's it. Pegasus uses Toon World deck to just demolish people and banish them to the Shadow Realm. Like, and they're like, oh yeah, I need a Toon deck, and then run out and like pay some skeezy speculator who had a Toon deck graded and overcharged the grandparents because it was probably Christmas money. Yeah,
True.
that's the thing. I think it's funny you bring that up because like the quality of the animation is way different. Like some of the earlier One Piece, man, I can't get into it. It's a sign of its times, but later on it gets like ridiculously awesome. Um,
Yeah, I'm experiencing that
but
right
like
now.
Yu-Gi-Oh is like almost throwaway episodes. There's hardly any main storyline from one thing to the next. Like maybe a 5-minute sequence that plays into the larger scenario, but for the most part, they're all like self-contained little worlds on their own.
Agreed.
He fights the guy, then he gets a clue for the bigger mission, or a single fight is stretched out over 5 weeks of episodes, and then you get the little nugget at the end to suggest that somebody behind the scenes is really pulling the strings.
True.
I think the last one I watched was Zexel, which was very much like that.
And people hated that one.
I know. They went totally over the top with it. Especially the animation was good. They had good graphics. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing that follows true in every one of the Yu-Gi-Oh arcs is that they all have like a duel in every episode, and pretty much the contents of that duel, what cards they played and stuff, since they're making it so convoluted and not following the rules, no one really remembers any of the battles, like what they did. And it's just like,
Right, right.
okay,
Nobody knows any cards except for the ones they personally play or they have played against.
yeah.
It's so funny.
And since
Like,
they change the rules with them every time, it's just like, wait, was that's like 80% of the episode. It's so forgettable.
I, the card effects are whatever we need them to be for the plot at this particular point in time. All right, trust us, bro. Yeah, it is so funny that what was it? The fact, and even if you think about it from like the in your universe aspects, like, dude, you're putting your life on the line, and you don't know what that card does. Like, how in the hell you get, like, most people know what the cards are, and they just put $10 on the line.
Sure.
They're still pissed when they lose. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, they're always funny. And I guess the funny thing is that, like, all the cartoons are aimed at a really young audience, as opposed to One Piece. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of adult stuff in there, so it's not like
I think it started off with the
5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds or whatever it is.
I think One Piece
10-year-old.
did a good job of starting off with that younger audience that made it into a cult classic, especially in Japan, you know, during the
Yeah,
early
yeah.
2000s, where I feel like manga was just such a big hit. And especially in the USA, that's where, you know, a lot of that anime genre started coming to cultivation. And I feel like they did a very good job of evolving with that same group of people that they appealed to early on as they grew up, you know, because then those people introduced their kids, you know, their family members, their brothers and sisters into that. And now it's just very much conjoined into that gray area of, you know, young adult. Whereas, you know, the classic fans don't feel like it's too childish to, you know, stay away and keep watching.
Yeah, it's like Harry Potter, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's all whimsical and fun at first, and then they're like, I don't know, by the 5th or 6th one, like, people start dying all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That tone shift just gave me whiplash right there.
I think that's all we're going to have to do for today. This has been episode 1 of the Table 1 podcast. Make sure to leave a like on this video and comment down below what you thought of today's episode. Hopefully we can make this a weekly thing. And as always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.